Hey y'all, it's Isis again. I wanted to come on today and actually talk a little bit about secondary traumatic stress. So you've heard me, or you may have heard me talk about secondary traumatic stress, and that's what my solo show, Sculpting Clay, or How I Became Mother of Unicorns, is about. Well, I realize that not everybody knows what secondary traumatic stress actually is. So I wanted to talk about that and explain to those who don't know, and to start the conversation with those who don't and do know about what that means and what it is. So secondary traumatic stress was coined, that name, by the National Child Trauma Stress Network. National Child Trauma Stress Network. And it's defined as the emotional duress that results when an individual hears about the firsthand trauma experiences of another. So it's not necessarily, secondary trauma isn't your own trauma. It's hearing about trauma, someone else's trauma, and what they're going through. As educators, as I'm sure all of you know, we're tasked with a lot of things. Of course, teaching content, of course, imparting knowledge, if you will. But one of the things that is rarely talked about is the mentor side of that, and hearing about the traumas and stresses that children are going through in this increasingly complicated world that they're living in and that we're living in. And hearing about that trauma, a lot of times as teachers, we hear about it and we talk to the student about it. The students talk to us, but there's nothing we can do. Like literally, the what we can do is report it and be a positive influence. But as someone who cares about children, as someone who cares about people, it can become really heavy when you see someone going through trauma and can't fix it, or can't truly help them step by step through it. A lot of times, and I'm sure many of you have heard about teacher burnout, which is a real thing. Teacher burnout is absolutely real. And it's caused by a myriad of things. But what we're finding, and what the research is saying, is that secondary traumatic stress plays a huge part, can play a huge part in teacher burnout. So my question to myself and to the world is, what can we do about it? Like literally, what can we do about helping teachers cope with this secondary traumatic stress, and not just shrugging our shoulders and say, okay, well, comes with the job. That's not helping anyone. So with this piece, Sculpting Clay, or How I Became Mother of Unicorns, I talk about that. It's a journey through my 14 years as a teacher, and the ups, which were many, and the unfortunate downs that I experienced in the classroom as a result of secondary traumatic stress. So I hope that you will consider donating to the GoFundMe. You can find the link. I'll attach the link to this. And it supports the performance, but it also supports the professional development that is attached to it, that goes into schools and on the front lines, help educators create systems to put in place to help combat secondary traumatic stress, to hopefully help ease these teacher burnout numbers and lessen them. So thank you. The show is Sculpting Clay, or How I Became Mother of Unicorns. I'm Isis Clay, and I wanted to make sure I pointed this out. Respect the profession. This is a t-shirt brand that is run by two of my very, very dear teaching friends. Their company is called Two Broke Teachers, and they make really dope shirts for educators. So make sure that you support them as well. Thanks to you all. Have a good one.